Welcome to this explainer. We've all been there, reading a weak, defensive post-mortem. The kind that kind of makes it look like the author doesn't really understand their own incident, or maybe just secretly wants to blame DNS. Well, today, we're going to change that. I'm stepping in as your senior engineer, and I'll be coaching you on exactly how to turn a messy, finger-pointing draft into a crisp, blameless post-mortem that actually builds serious trust with leadership.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our blueprint for today. We're covering 1. Building trust through writing. 2. The 5 essential sections. 3. Essential IT vocabulary. 4. Fixing common language mistakes. And finally, 5. A live edit of an API outage.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Building Trust Through Writing.
It is absolutely crucial to understand that the language in your report is just as important as the code in your systems. Honestly, a postmortem isn't just some annoying administrative chore. It's a massive organizational learning tool. Compare a blameful statement like, John deployed without getting review and broke the server, with a systemic one. The deployment process allowed production changes without review. See the difference? Shifting from who did it to what allowed it to happen creates this incredibly powerful, blameless culture. When engineers aren't terrified of punishment, they actually share the truth.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 5 essential sections.
To really put this blameless culture into practice, you can't just brain dump a stream of consciousness paragraph onto a page. Every expert-level postmortem requires a predictable structural anatomy. It seriously reduces cognitive load during those super high-stress debriefs. So, the 5 standard parts are: first, a chronological timeline. Second, the root cause. Third, contributing factors. Fourth, the impact on the business. And fifth, specific action items to prevent it from ever happening again.
Next up, Section 3, Essential IT vocabulary. Now, if you want senior engineers to truly respect your report, you literally have to speak fluent SRE. Let's start with root cause. This is the fundamental technical or organizational defect. The crucial point here is that a root cause is the fixable origin point. It's the deep why behind the outage, not just the initial trigger or the symptom. You'll often dig down to it using the 5 whys technique.
Next, we have contributing factors. These are the specific conditions that made the incident more likely or maybe more severe, but they weren't the actual direct trigger. Think of them as environmental stressors. It could be a cascading failure across services, a really badly documented runbook, or, an engineer who's been awake for 20 hours fueled entirely by stale pizza and energy drinks.
Then there's blast radius. Fun fact, this originally comes from military terminology. But in SRE, a small blast radius is basically your best friend. It represents the scope of systems or customers affected by a failure. We use it to measure architectural resilience, like pinpointing whether we experienced a full global outage or just a minor service degradation, and whether that blast radius was successfully contained to a single geographic region.
All right, moving on to mitigation. These are your immediate actions or workarounds taken during the incident to essentially stop the bleeding. But remember, mitigation, like scaling up server capacity or quickly rerouting traffic, is just a temporary bandage. It is completely different from a permanent, long-term remediation.
And wrapping up the vocab, we have MTTR, or mean time to recovery. This is the average time it takes to resolve an incident from the point of detection, which, by the way, is often called MTTD, or mean time to detect. This brilliantly illustrates our ultimate goal, right? Using these blameless postmortems to actually learn from our mistakes and consistently drive down our MTTR over time.
Let's jump into Section 4, Fixing Common Language Mistakes.
Now, let's tackle the systemic grammar errors that non-native English speakers often make. And listen, these small slips can actually secretly undermine your technical authority. They're usually just rooted in the structure of a writer's first language. For instance, languages like Mandarin or Russian just don't use articles the same way English does. But mixing up those tenses, missing articles, or using vague verbs, it distracts the reader. So let's fix those habits right now. Take a look at this phrase, team find bug in database. We all know what it means, right? It's perfectly understandable. But missing those articles and using the present tense kind of makes it sound unpolished. Notice how simply adding the, and the past tense verb identified instantly elevates the whole thing. The team identified a bug in the database. Suddenly, it's precise. It's professional.
Now here's a really fascinating tip about sentence structure. We're usually told to always use active voice for clarity, right? But using the passive voice strategically can actually be a huge help here. Instead of saying, I believe the failure was caused by a glitch, which sounds like a totally subjective opinion, say, the failure was determined to be caused by a software glitch. By just removing the I, you completely remove personal bias and project objective, professional authority.
Okay, bringing us to Section 5, live edit of an API outage.
Let's put everything we've talked about together and live edit a messy draft of a 30-minute API outage. Starting with the incident summary. A weak summary like, API went down and we fixed it, just makes you look completely out of your depth. Instead, you want to clearly quantify the time, the specific impact, and the high-level cause. Between 10:36 and 11:06 UTC, users experienced authentication failures due to a load balancer misconfiguration. Bam! This gives leadership exactly what they need right up front.
When you're building out that timeline, precision is absolutely everything. Never write something like, around 10 a.m. something went wrong. Use precise timestamps, preferably in UTC so nobody gets confused by time zones, and keep a consistent past tense to describe the whole sequence of events.
Now for the root cause. We have to ruthlessly strip away those blameful, finger-pointing phrases like, someone forgot to test the rule. Instead, swap it out with a systemic explanation. A misconfigured load balancer rule introduced during deployment routed traffic to an invalid target. Do you see what we did there? We're focusing entirely on the gap in our deployment process, rather than the human error.
Moving over to contributing factors, it's super common to see a fragmented thought here, like alert fatigue from unrelated services. We need to take that fragment and turn it into a crystal clear sentence explaining exactly how it expanded our time to detect. We want to spell out that alert fatigue from unrelated services was a contributing factor in the 15-minute detection delay.
And finally, the action items. This is absolutely critical. Your action items must never, ever rely on humans simply trying harder or being more careful. We want to build a future where our systems catch our mistakes, so your action items have to be actionable, specific, and bounded system improvements. For example, implement automated validation checks for load balancer rules in the staging environment.
I absolutely love this quote from Google SRE Devin Carway. The cost of failure is education. It just brilliantly captures why we do this rigorous writing process. An outage is an incredibly expensive lesson for any company. And we write these postmortems because it's a lesson we only want to pay for once.
So, next time you're staring at a blank document after an incident, ask yourself, are you just rushing to assign blame? Or are you actually ready to use this structured, blameless framework to build real trust with your engineering team? Master this language, and you literally turn an outage into your organization's greatest opportunity for growth. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.